Okay, we're good to go.
Okay. Okay, this is our presentation, and we had 80s fashion. And I'm Maddie, and I did historical events. You can go to the next one. Okay, so in 1981, the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana took place on July 29th in London at the St. Paul's Cathedral. The designers of her dress were David and Elizabeth Emanuel, as well as Prince Charles's suit. And the couple's fashion choices still influence fashion today. In fact, while I was doing my research, I read that Prince Charles wore a 1984 suit to the wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle just a couple years ago. Okay, the next one. So Princess Diana's fairy tale gown was made from antique lace and silk. Her veil was about 25 feet long, and her dress was inspired by 80s British trends. In the 80s, the shoulder pads and puff sleeves were really popular, and her dress had both. The next one. So in 1983, the Japanese designer Yohji Yamamoto was really well known, and his work was popular all over the world. And his work became the most favored work of the 1980s urban aesthetic. His designs played a really big role in 1980s fashion. And his trademark was the black and voluminous silhouette look. Okay, next one. So in 1987, Christian Lacroix opened a new couture house in Paris. And at the inauguration, he was awarded the most influential foreign designer. He was inspired by the 1880s type of style of dress. And so he designed an off-the-shoulder dress. And what was really popular on his work was high waist. So that was really common on his dresses, and as well as the mini skirt. Okay, next one.
Okay, so I'm Caitlin Lemke, and I had fashion characteristics. Okay, so something that really influenced the fashion of this time was New Romantics. And so it's an 80s youth culture, and it was influenced by period costumes, and it was very theatrical with lots of frills and lavish materials like satin, silk, and velvet. Next. Okay, and then another thing that inspired this time was goths, and it was inspired by early novel and horror novel films, and dark dramatic clothing, as well as they also had dark hair and makeup. Okay, so shoulder pads and large sleeves were very big at this time. Shoulder pads were mostly worn in women's clothing, and it was just a padding sewn on the shoulders of like their shirts or dresses. And it gave an illusion of a broader chest with less sloping shoulders, and it also accentuated the waist and made it look smaller. And then puff sleeves were also a big thing, and you actually saw that in Princess Diana's wedding dress as well. Okay, and then short skirts and dresses. So mini skirts were a big thing at this time, and they just landed on the mid to upper thigh. And then dresses were usually lace, velvet, with bows and silk. And even on the dress, you can see that it's a little shorter. Okay, and then spandex was huge. It would oftentimes be part of everyday apparel. So swimwear, shorts, skirts, waistbands, briefs, and stirrup slacks. And then it was also a big part of exercise fashion. And usually the exercise fashion would be leotard, leg warmers, scrunchy, high cut fitness briefs, spandex pants, and headband. And it was oftentimes very neon. Okay, and then tailored suits. So the most popular type of suits at this time was the drape suit. And it extended the shoulders, and then it was low slung, and then it had 6 buttons, but only 1 button actually worked. And then very wide lapels, and then full pleated dress pants. Okay, and then stiletto heels. So they were really big too. I mean, they still kind of are now, but they liked really bright colors. The peep toe heel was a big thing, which is in the bottom right picture. White pumps, satin heels, which is in the top right picture, and then dyeable heels, which were just heels that came in white, and you could dye them to match the color of your dress. Okay, and then shoes. Probably the most popular shoes of this time were Doc Martens, which were worn by youths of all like styles. Like it would be worn from goths to just literally almost everyone. And then Crocs were a big thing, and they still are, I think. And they're plastic shoes, and they were worn by just about everyone as well.
Okay, so I'm Mary Holm, and I'm doing the designers of the 80s. So first I want to talk about Sonia Rykiel. She was a French designer, and she was known as the Queen of Knits. So she made a lot of sweaters that were upscale but ready to wear. She was also known for like the poor boy sweater and just all different types of sweaters with stripes and different styles. And she made things that were really comfortable and stylish. And she said, men won't be wearing the clothes. Therefore, practical considerations are secondary. Women designers define things with a more practical eye because of the limitations of their body. A collar that looks elegant on the drawing board might be difficult to pull over the head, and pants that appear elegant can be constricting. So she was very about designing clothes that actually worked for women. So she would often, before she started designing for other people, she designed clothes for herself and made clothes for herself because she couldn't find things that worked. And so this was kind of revolutionary at the time to make things that actually worked for the women and female body instead of things that just look good. So that was really amazing. Another designer was Vivienne Westwood. So they had their first solo collection in 1985. She worked with other designers before then. And she had more of the structured and feminine fit. And so she had different collections like Buffalo, Time Machine, and Civilizade. So at the next slide, we'll look at those. So she kind of went into a lot of different aesthetics. So Time Machine was more like modern, silver, and kind of just goes along with the name. And then Civilizade has this kind of jester looking outfit, but a lot of them look like that. And then there was Buffalo, which was all of these browns and just bigger things. And then there was Pirate, which was quite literally pirate outfits that she designed for people that were still ready to wear. And so she really brought out more costumey looks that still look good. And now we're going to go into Gianni Versace. So they were an Italian designer and their designs are still very relevant today. And it was said that their designs ooze sensuality and sexuality. So these were more of like the scandalous, vulgar things in the 80s, and people kind of hated them at first, but then became more comfortable with them. And they designed haute couture for the first time for them in 1989. And in that same year, they also started making costumes for the opera. So you can see here the different things that they designed were very out there, very big. These like beautiful dresses that people hadn't really seen before. And unfortunately, they were killed by the serial killer Andrew Cunanan, which is kind of crazy to think about. So, and then last, we're going to talk about Christian Lacroix. So he opened his own haute couture house in 1987, which was previously mentioned, and he had a lot of looks from diverse cultures. So he brought those in and made them ready to wear. And they were very eccentric and out there, full of color and fun silhouettes. And I love this creative type of fashion just because we were more encouraged to be out there and it wasn't as status quo. And it looks like these are still seen today all around the world. He had crazy designs that people loved, and he had theatricality, so just things that hadn't been seen before. But he now sells ready-to-wear lines that still have a hint of what he does, but just people are able to wear them every day. So when I was researching, you could find his website where you could still buy clothes and different things like perfume. And then last, this is our family picture of the design of the time. This is my mom. So the left picture is her and her boyfriend at the time. And they wore, these big white, a lot of white clothes. And she had those long socks and chunky shoes. In the middle, this is her prom dress, and she made this herself. So it has those puff sleeves, the satin that was very popular, the bright pink. And she still has this today, and it's pretty cool to look at. And then on the right, you can see the big hair that they have. And I think this was her going to church. So yeah, just cool to see that fashion actually in use.
Okay, I'm Ellie Greenlaw, and I'm focusing on pop culture. So the first topic is music, and in the 80s, the 70s disco trend was dying out, and so it was post-disco, Italio disco, Euro disco, and dance pop that became popular. Modern rock was also starting to spread popularity, and electric dance music was starting to become popular. And some of the popular artists were David Bowie, Michael Jackson, Billy Idol, and Blondie. And the main fashion characteristics were big hair, spandex, leg warmers, and there were a lot of neon colors and mullets. And high-waisted jeans were one of the main things that people wore, and the more out there, the better. And movies back then were said to be some of the best movies of all time. And some of the greatest were 16 Candles, Heathers, The Breakfast Club, The Shining, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Dirty Dancing. And the most influential movie of that time was Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. And it is said that Darth Vader revealing that he is Luke's father is one of the most quoted lines from any movie. And some of the main technology back then were Walkmans and CDs. The records that were super popular 60s and 70s were going out, and cassettes and Walkmans were the most popular thing that people used